Ever pondered about who the top 5 serial killers hailing from Utah are? Well, buckle up, because we're about to delve into a world where the ordinary meets the extraordinary, where the guise of normality masks the most chilling of realities. Serial killers. Those two words send shivers down the spine, don't they? They conjure up images of dark alleyways, shadowy figures, and the stuff of nightmares. But what exactly defines a serial killer? It's a term used for a person who commits a series of murders, often with no apparent motive, and typically following a characteristic predictable behavior pattern. They're not your regular criminals. They're methodical, often highly intelligent, and they blend into society like a chameleon. But what makes Utah a breeding ground for such individuals? This picturesque state, with its snow-capped mountains and vast desert landscapes, seems an unlikely setting for such dark tales, doesn't it? Yet it's within these serene surroundings that some of the most notorious killers have emerged. Utah's history is steeped in mystery and intrigue, a backdrop that seems to attract these characters. The state's vast, sparsely populated areas provide the perfect canvas for these individuals to carry out their heinous acts, often undetected for years. It's a chilling thought, but one that we must confront if we're to understand the dark underbelly of this seemingly peaceful state. So, are you ready to journey into the heart of darkness? To uncover the sinister secrets lurking within Utah's picturesque landscapes? To delve into the minds of the individuals who have cast a shadow over this state's history? If so, prepare yourself. The stories you're about to hear are not for the faint of heart. They're tales of the human psyche at its darkest, of the depths to which some can sink, and of the terror they can inflict. Let's delve into the darkness and reveal the first on our list. Our journey into the abyss begins with Arthur Gary Bishop, active from 1979 to 1983. Born and raised in Utah, Bishop was a seemingly ordinary man. A former Eagle Scout and an active member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, his outward image was one of respectability. Yet beneath this facade lurked a sinister darkness. Bishop was a predator, targeting young boys. His modus operandi was chillingly calculated. He would gain the trust of his victims, lure them to his home with the promise of magic tricks or games. Then, in the quiet of his basement, he would strike. He was responsible for the lives of 5 innocent children, each crime more horrific than the last. The fear that gripped Utah's communities during his reign of terror was palpable. Parents clutched their children a little tighter, eyes darted in the shadows a little longer. His capture in 1983 came as a shock to many who knew him, unable to reconcile the image of the man they thought they knew with the monster unveiled. It was a chilling reminder of the duality of human nature, of the darkness that can hide behind the most ordinary of faces. Bishop was sentenced to death and was executed in 1988, leaving a chilling legacy behind. His story serves as a stark reminder of the sinister beginnings of Utah's dark side, a tale that continues to haunt, a specter that continues to lurk in the shadows of Utah's past. Next up is a man who terrorized Utah in the mid-'80s, Robert Berdella. Hailing from a middle-class family, Berdella was an unassuming character who ran a small antique shop in Salt Lake City. Beneath this facade, however, lay a grim reality that would shake the state of Utah to its core. Berdella's victims were primarily young men, often drifters or hitchhikers, who were lured by his seemingly friendly demeanor. Once they were in his clutches, Berdella would subject them to unthinkable horrors, meticulously documented in a chilling diary that police would later discover. His methods were chillingly systematic. Berdella would drug his victims, rendering them helpless, before subjecting them to physical and psychological torture. The level of sadism exhibited by Berdella was, according to investigators, unprecedented in the annals of Utah crime history. Despite his horrendous actions, Berdella managed to elude capture for several years. His reign of terror came to an end in 1987, when one of his victims managed to escape and alerted the police. The subsequent investigation uncovered the full extent of Berdella's crimes, leaving the community shocked and horrified. The trial that followed was one of the most high-profile in the state's history. Berdella was found guilty on multiple counts of murder, kidnapping, and torture. The judge, in his sentencing, noted the unimaginable cruelty of Berdella's acts and sentenced him to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The harsh sentence reflected the community's desire for justice and a sense of closure for the victims' families. Berdella's fate was ultimately sealed within the confines of the prison. He died in 1992, just 5 years into his sentence. His death, however, did little to erase the memories of his gruesome crimes. Berdella died in prison in 1992, but not before leaving a trail of terror in his wake. As we move into the 90s, we encounter one of Utah's most infamous killers, Troy Michael Kell. Born and raised in a seemingly ordinary American family, Kell's life took a dark turn. His first known victim, a fellow inmate, fell prey to his cold-blooded nature in the confines of a Nevada prison. But it was his second killing, this time in Utah, that truly gripped the state in fear. Kell's second victim, Lonnie Blackman, was also a fellow inmate. Kell, a white supremacist, targeted Blackman due to his race, creating a chilling scene that shook the Utah State Prison to its core. His methods were brutal and merciless, a stark contrast to the picturesque landscapes of Utah. But Kell's reign of terror didn't end there. He continued to terrorize his fellow inmates, using his imposing presence and manipulative nature to maintain a reign of fear. His actions painted a dark picture of life behind bars, a stark reminder of the monsters that lurk in the most unexpected places. Kell's capture wasn't marked by a dramatic chase or a tense standoff. Instead, he was already behind bars when he committed his most infamous crimes. His actions sent shockwaves through the prison system, prompting a reevaluation of inmate safety and segregation policies. Despite his violent history, Kell was never sentenced to death. Instead, he was handed a life sentence without the possibility of parole. His crimes, however, continue to haunt those who knew of him, a grim reminder of the darkness that can exist within seemingly ordinary individuals. Now, Kell spends his days in the Utah State Prison, a far cry from the freedom he once enjoyed. His life is marked by routine and confinement, a stark contrast to the chaos and fear he once instilled. Even behind bars, Kell's story serves as a chilling reminder of the monsters that can exist in our society. His actions, although confined to the walls of a prison, have left a lasting impact on those who knew of him and the state of Utah as a whole. Kell remains alive, serving his life sentence in Utah State Prison. Our journey ends with the most recent of Utah's serial killers, Douglas Anderson Lovell. Born in the heart of the Beehive State, Lovell's life was marred by early brushes with the law, but none would predict the terrifying path he would eventually walk. Lovell's victims, all young women, were brutally taken before their time. He was a predator, stalking the vulnerable and unsuspecting, his methods chillingly calculated. Each woman was lured into his trap with the promise of a safe ride or assistance, only to be met with a nightmare that no one should ever have to endure. But let's rewind to the beginning. Lovell, like many before him, was a seemingly ordinary man. A native of Ogden, Utah, he was a husband and a father. However, beneath this familiar facade lurked a monster. His criminal record, though extensive, paled in comparison to the horrors he would soon unleash. His first known victim, a young woman barely out of her teens, was found discarded like refuse. The details are too gruesome to recount here, but suffice to say, the brutality of her death sent shockwaves through the community, and she wouldn't be the last. Lovell's reign of terror continued, with each murder more brutal and callous than the last. The community lived in fear, women afraid to walk alone at night, parents clutching their children a little closer. But like all reigns of terror, Lovell's came to an end. It was a cold winter day when detectives following a lead knocked on Lovell's door. What they found inside his home was a chilling tableau of his crimes, a macabre gallery that left no room for doubt. Lovell was arrested, tried, and convicted. His trial was a media circus, the public watching with bated breath as the details of his heinous crimes were laid bare. The jury didn't deliberate long. The evidence was overwhelming, and the verdict unanimous. Douglas Anderson Lovell, the man who had instilled fear into the hearts of an entire community, was found guilty. His sentence? Death. A fate many would argue was too kind for the atrocities he had committed. Today, Lovell remains on death row, his reign of terror halted, but the scars he left behind still fresh. His victims may be gone, but they are not forgotten. Their memories live on, a stark reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the most unassuming of places. Lovell was sentenced to death and remains on death row, the final chapter of his reign of terror yet to be written.